Hello everybody, Dan TCV, TheCriminalViolin here. Welcome to episode 2 of CHATTERBOX. This episode is going to be fully dedicated to the game Atlas, as the last episode, so the first official episode of CHATTERBOX, I spoke about Atlas at a time when I had absolutely zero experience in actually anything with the game. By that I mean like watching anything, well even watching really trailers, keeping up with the game and its release notes or anything like that. It's development. So I made a comment that I know as soon as I watched some videos on it, I immediately realized I needed to immediately address it in the next episode, the second episode of CHATTERBOX, because of the fact that I made a reference saying that the closest game I could possibly compare it to is Ark, and of course having absolutely no possible experience or realization of anything, not keeping up with the game and its development, literally anything. I had no idea that was actually made by Ark's dev team. It's actually made by the exact same development company. And Ark is famous for being unoptimized still. It's finally been slightly more optimized, but I made notes. One of the reasons why I made notes in comparison to Ark is not only that it seems very, very intensely similar to Ark, but it just something, just the fact that how it was released was a utter clone to that of Ark itself. And that's a bad thing when you realize it's actually released by the very same development team, the very same game development and publishing company. It's released by the exact same people. And what this release being a clone to Ark proves is that they are out for the money and the hype. They're not out for anything else. Because otherwise, if they were, they would have learned their lessons and they would not have done the exact same thing again as they did with Ark. When they released Ark, they were announcing it was going to be officially released in its early access state. Obviously, at an official date, that then they had to push out and delay, I think, by a couple of weeks or something like that, maybe even a month. I can't quite remember. And they eventually released the early access build, first early access build, sometime in January, or rather sometime in 2015. I believe it was actually early in the year, but I'm not entirely. It might have actually been more like June. I can't quite remember. But yeah, they did that, and they swore it was only going to be maybe a few months at all before they finally could fully release the game, and they fixed everything and all that. It's got stuck in early access for 3 years. It only released in 2018. It took them 3 years to get themselves out of early access, and it's still not very well optimized, if really at all. And there's still a handful of bugs, handful of glitches, handful of errors, all sorts of other things you can run into. But the main thing is it's unoptimized. They never optimized it. They were going to release Atlas. It came out in the news that it actually was they were going to release Atlas as a expansion pack to Ark. But instead of an expansion pack, we're gonna decide, let's completely pretend this is actually its own full-on standalone game that isn't just effectively an expansion and really reskin of Ark. And that's basically what everybody's calling it, is Ark 2, Ark Pirates Evolved, and various things like that, because it is quite literally effectively a reskinned thing. For the most part. There is a bit of difference in the gameplay. There is a bit of difference in extras in it that you would not get with Ark. But for the most part, it's effectively just renamed critters and animals that you could tame, or you have to fight that you couldn't tame, and same with bosses and things like that. And instead of dinosaurs, you're taming those somewhat reskinned animals that also simply just had a name change. Yeah, it's effectively the exact same thing, at its core and as structure. It's essentially the same thing. The maps look a little different, the textures do, but for the most part, it's still pretty much the same. But I could see it working out for those who want to be and play as pirates and have a piratey game rather than a dinosaur game. I could totally see that happening. And that was initially, obviously, their idea. It's okay, let's make an expansion pack that retools it so instead of dinosaurs, instead you can be pirates and you can loot instead of trying to tame dinosaurs. You know, basically predating on what in that first episode I talked about, just in general, the resurgence of RPGs and especially pirate RPGs as being a nostalgia factor. I keep messing up my armrest. Sorry about that. But yes, so that's what they're doing. Is they're predating off of the nostalgia factor and the hype that they can get off of that while it lasts. Realistically, is all they're doing right now. And to an extent, it's worked. It hasn't worked as well as they figured because they did the exact same clone to what they did when they tried to release Ark. Now almost, going on basically 4 years ago. It took them until last year in like the summer to finally actually, literally 3 whole years down the road of early access, and they finally released it full, even though it's still, again, unoptimized, as I keep saying. There's a lot of problems with it, but lots of people still play it. It has its own dedicated community, and it's not as niche as a lot of people expected it to be because of the 3 straight years of early access and the fact that the devs just don't really seem to care too much about optimizing their games or fixing them. And I think with Atlas, it goes to prove it even further. They don't really care about the community. They don't really care about the desires and the wants and the needs of the community or the players, and they don't really care for their games. They don't really care to optimize them or fix bugs very readily or anything like that because they're more out for getting as much hype and attention and money they can. Thus, they released Atlas as its own standalone, as if it isn't just simply really a DLC/expansion pack for Ark that they decided to push out a standalone, which is exactly what they did. But I watched a good portion of Partially Royal's little series he's doing on Atlas, and so far I've actually liked what I've seen. I could find myself probably getting into Atlas more than Ark, because Ark seems to also be a little more complex and complicated and skill-based, whereas Atlas does not seem as much, although Atlas seems about as much, if not possibly slightly more grindy. In fact, actually probably a lot more grindy, especially when it comes to the shipbuilding, because as some of the devs have revealed, is that they intentionally made it so that or rather I should say 5 players to make it's either second or third biggest ship, should take them, 5 players should take them between 8 and 15 to 20 hours to build it and complete it. Who in the hell in their right minds, or even in their left minds, their upside down minds, or their skewed minds, would ever want to waste their days and time away grinding and building a single thing inside of a game for anywhere between basically 10 and 20 hours in a group of 5? And that's straight through. That's with no breaks. Like, think about how stupid of a concept that is. That's what this dev team decided they wanted to do. They want you to grind to such an extent, it's disgusting. I know that that's probably, my assumption is that's probably a lot like what 2K Sports does with NBA 2K. They intentionally make it ultra grindy with the claim that, it's for skill-based competitive types that really want to play the completionist attitude. But in reality, it's not at all for that. It's not to prevent people from suddenly becoming max level automatically, or like within, a few days or a few weeks of buying the game. No, the reality is that that's their excuse. The reality really is that they're both, the 2K does that because of the fact that they want to acclaim to the title of having the most dedicated fans, as in they spend hours upon hours upon hours a day grinding in our system because they love our game so much. It's not that they love the game so much, it's just the fact that you suck at everything, because that's really what you're doing. Is you're trying to skew demographics in your favor, even though it really obviously isn't showing not the whole, but it's really not showing almost any of the story, and it's certainly not showing any of the real story. It's showing a little bit of a false story that you're using intentionally to, again, benefit yourself, but you're not actually being honest with anybody. You're just trying to get the demographics to skew into your favor, timeline-wise, of how much time people spend in the game per day. That's why you grind it out. That's why you make it as intensely grindy as possible. Like, you have to spend an entire year grinding your ass off in one single game just to get to a playable extent, basically, and actually be able to compete, which really sucks. That is my assumption of what Atlas and thus the game devs of Atlas and Arc are doing with their games, and including, and most specifically here, with Atlas, is they're copying the 2K, let's skew the demographics in our favor idea of, see, we have an ultra-dedicated fan base that only likes to play our game, which means, if they only play our game for, 6 hours a day, then that means that we have some of the more dedicated fans, and also, obviously, our game is obviously that damn good. That's what they think they're going to get with the skewed statistics in their favor like that, from making you grind your ass off every damn day for like 6 hours straight. In a group of 5, though, in Atlas's case. But if you're one person, it's mathematically basically just about guaranteed that you're going to take, especially without any kind of aid or cheats at default values, it could take you upwards of 40, maybe even 50 hours by yourself to build that one boat in Atlas, that one ship. The fact that the devs are willing to straight up like say, yeah, that's the intention, that's what we wanted, that's cool, isn't it? Like, they actually think that's a good thing. That's how they're presenting it. The fact that they're willing to do that and have that kind of audacity is disgusting. That's one major kick in the nuts that the devs of Atlas have pulled with this game, is that. And I think that's probably the biggest BS they've pulled yet with this game. Like, I think that the concept of them simply pushing this as if it's its own standalone game rather than a reskin expansion / DLC of Arc, I think that's peanuts compared to the fact that they're doing this with the whole grindathon thing, pretending, oh, it's cool. Yeah, totally, people want that. Yeah, they want to spend 40, 50 hours of, in the game just to build one ship that's not even the biggest one. Because the biggest one could take upwards of 200 hours, is what they figured, with one person to build. Just let that sink in, no pun intended. It's despicable and unacceptable, and you could almost argue even immoral that these devs are doing this. But that's what they're doing. And it's really, I sincerely believe it's like they're mimicking 2K in the sense that they want to skew the statistics and time in their favor for the very reason I explained before. Because it makes, in the way they will then skew it and push it further once they have the statistics in their favor, timeline-wise, is, well, this means we have the best fans. And this means that, obviously, we did right with our game, because, obviously, they love our game that much. When, in reality, 90% of those players and 90% of that, time spent is building one single mother trucking ship. Like, that's beyond words how unacceptable that is. But I know that's got to be what they're doing. That's got to be their intent, is copying 2K's, let's give the statistics so we can bullshit further. And it's disgusting. So that's my biggest complaint about them with this. With the second one obviously being kind of what I touched on in the beginning there, which is that they haven't learned their lesson. Either that they have, they just don't give a damn about the lesson that they did learn, if they did allow themselves to learn it at all. All likelihood is, with the way they're doing things, it shows that they didn't learn it because they didn't want to. They didn't care, they didn't pay attention to it, they didn't want to, because they knew what they were doing with Arc, and they didn't care. They knew what they were doing with Atlas, obviously, and again, they're showing they don't care. That's the thing with this dev studio, is if you look at Arc, and the 3-year early access it was in, and the fact it's still bugged, it's still unoptimized, it still has a lot of problems. Yeah, it's relatively playable if you have a pretty damn beefy computer, which is another downside to it, honestly, if you ask me. But it's still like they haven't fixed anything in it. And instead of fixing it and optimizing it, no, let's just push out a DLC / expansion pack. But instead, let's pretend it's its own standalone game. It's totally not just that expansion DLC for Arc, And yet they push it out in the exact same cloned fashion to that of Arc, which in all likelihood means this game might just get stuck in early access also for years. And I question if this one will actually be able to hold up and succeed like Arc has, because I feel like it probably won't be able to, in all honesty. So this is the stuff I kind of learned from the main things I wanted to touch on from watching Partially Royal's series on Atlas. The things I didn't know when I recorded this first episode of Chatterbox, and so I wanted to definitely make sure I recorded this and then posted this within a couple of days of that one, so that I could touch on Atlas itself and explain that I only incidentally, without knowing, when I related it to Arc, I had absolutely no goddamn clue. There's no way I could have had a clue about how dead on point that was of a comparison. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. That's all I wanted to touch on in this episode. It's going to be really short compared to normal for a Chatterbox, but it's because it only has one specific subject. And instead of the typical random chat, it's going to be, obviously, as you can tell from this, just straight up an actual dedicated episode dedicated to a topic that I wanted and felt I needed to talk about and touch on. Definitely stick around, though, for Chatterbox Episode 3. Chatterbox, of course, this podcast of mine. But definitely, Episode 3 is definitely one you want to stick around for, especially if you're a Whovian, or you like Doctor Who, or you're interested in Doctor Who at all, or you just want to, I don't know, just like let your ventilation happen with this last season with Chin Balls. Yes, I know it's technically Chibnall, shut up. But yeah, taking over the helm and his producers as well, and just how kindergartner they wrote it. Like, I talk all about that. I go on a little rant. It's a 37-minute episode, I think. Strictly dedicated to this last season of Doctor Who. And just Doctor Who in general, but specifically Doctor Who this last season, and why the BBC has been bullshitting the entire Whovian base with why they supposedly need to replace Stephen Muffin. And yes, I know his name's Moffat, shut up. And the fact that they replaced him with a kindergartner's book writer with Chibnall, along with his production team. Like, you're just gonna have to wait and watch episode 3 for sure. Also, I just want to touch on really quick before I officially end this, that Chatterbox, I so far won't have a schedule. I don't know if I will have a specific schedule of set days or whatever I'm going to intend to upload, or try to at least. But currently my feeling is that I'm going to try to upload one a week. I'm not a big routine guy, and so far my experience, going on 4 years, just about 4 years straight of experience on YouTube, I've found I don't function, and I likely won't end up doing anything with this if I actually set a schedule and a set of days and times and stuff. But I'm going to still try to aim for one a week. These will be uploaded whenever. I hope you enjoyed this episode 2 of Chatterbox. Got the gist? Let me know what you think down below of Atlas, and what your opinions are of what they should have done, the dev team behind Arc and Atlas. And honestly, just your entire honest opinion. Even if you go on the longest spiel, please do. I would love to interact, and I would love to see just what your guys' thoughts and opinions and all that are, and feelings on Atlas and on that dev studio and what they've been doing and pulling lately. Otherwise, I have been Danny TheCriminalViolin. Hope you have enjoyed. Hope you got the gist. This has been Chatterbox Episode 2, and I hope to see you in the next episode of my podcast Chatterbox. Please do leave a like, comment, and shop a sandwich if you wish to. If you don't, well, then you don't. It is mighty helpful, though. And otherwise, I hope to see you in the next video. Stay safe, stay fluffy, have a great night, English. Have a great night or night wherever you are, and bye-bye.